Hi there, YouTube. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. It's the 11th of December. Hope everybody's doing well. Things are moving along here apace. Got in the happy position of working on something that I really have been wanting to work on, pretty much every day of my life. So that's great. I'm not going to bore you with the details now, but I did get. It is really amazing. I will say, independent of the colonies thing, it really is amazing the kind of education you can get if you're curious and switched on about a particular subject. I spent several hours last night doing kind of the Socratic method with ChatGPT about quantum mechanics, just basic, run-of-the-mill quantum stuff, and learned a lot. Had to unlearn a lot of things too. Am I still drinking? No. I've given that up for the next. I've been clean and sober for what time is it? 2.5 hours, I would say, at least. Oh, purified water. I didn't see that. I just saw that. I just saw. Are you still drinking? No, I am still. I am still drinking some purified water. Yeah, doing fine. So I think what we'll probably do, since I don't have any particular political stuff on hand to kind of dive into, I think I'll probably just jump into the questiones, and we'll chat on the chat, and we'll do some of that stuff. I can't believe it's already middle of December. My God, it's absolutely astonishing. Hi, everybody who's checking in. Dave Big Boutte says Bill had a drinking problem since that day over Macho Grande, but as you well know, Dave, I'll never be over Macho Grande. So... Yeah, as it happens to be another person I know. Bob is a great guy, and I haven't seen him in a while, but he's just as sweet as you can be. So it's time to trot out all these people, and we'll see where we go with it. All right, why don't we just do that? Just kind of mulch into the questions and kind of see where where that leads. So let's just crack this open here. Go to our super fast, blindingly fast website here and see what's happening. Hope everybody's been well. And again, it's like here we are on the 11th of December, and we are pretty much right in the heart of the dead 6 weeks. Robert Hayes, sorry. The week of Thanksgiving prior to the Thursday is pretty much shut down, and at least in the entertainment business, nothing else happens until the second week in January. So it's time to catch up on a bunch of other things. I have finished that AI documentary that I was doing work with, and so that gives me some free time. And right now, I'm just using this 6-week period to prepare as much as I can, so that when we get into January of 26, I can go after that funding even more kind of aggressively than I plan to right now. So just getting everything into shape. And I think the next thing I will do that I'll output is it's kind of that TED Talk on quantum information physics, and then I also need to have a working scene with the actual characters. Been working on that a lot lately too. The Nano Banana is a new piece of software out that is very good at preserving characters, so kind of locking some of those characters down so I can create real scenes instead of just threads, and obviously, if I'm going to go to the trouble of doing a scene, I want it to be one of the scenes that ends up in the sizzle reel for the fundraising. So that's basically what I've been working on. Okay, looks like questions. Yes, for 11. Oh, I see what you're saying. Thank you, Eric. It is for 12/11/25, curated by Marusha Dark. Thank you so much, Marusha. And let's see what we have here. Oh, we've got a Marusha Dark. We've got an Ian Noland. We've got a Capital G Geek, a Roadrunner, a Bob Neef, broke college student, Eric Blake, and that'll do it. I think we will. I think we'll just get through these and spend our time on them, and then we'll call it a night. I got that, Eric. Thank you very much. Okay, here we go. Moving on. Or starting out, I suppose I should say. Marusha Dark topic: the new Colossus. Though you've often rebutted the Statue of Liberty poem when invoked by leftists claiming it doesn't say "give me only your huddled masses," to me this has the same energy as saying we want skilled H-1B workers, not just unskilled rabble, which seems to go against the MAGA nativist ethos. I have a problem with some of that nativist ethos. I think a better attack angle might be to point out that the poem invites those yearning to breathe free, not those yearning for free shit. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a Statue of Liberty, not the Statue of Welfare Beneficiaries. Excellent point as well. It's about freedom first and foremost, political and religious freedom, which is why the poem also calls her the mother of exiles, meaning genuine refugees. My friend Austin Peterson had a similar one-liner in that same spirit when he said, "It's called the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. That's just because someone has a need doesn't automatically mean they have a right to take my stuff against my consent," which is what welfare is. It's blood money, same as if the mafia built schools and hospitals off of broken kneecaps. Thoughts? P.S. Just sent you 2 emails as they were too long for normal Q&A, but I felt they were important. Got those emails and answered them. So, let's see. Look, as far as nativism goes, it seems like virtually all of the ills in the world happen as a result of overreaction to stimuli, or not overreaction. That's not what I meant to say at all. What I meant to say is we live in a world where you give people an inch and they take a mile. So as a culture, we've had an ethos of immigration and the idea of a melting pot and the idea that that you could become a new person by coming to America, and that we all came to America in the same spirit because we all came to America, including the Indians. And so that generosity gets weaponized against us intentionally with the Ted Kennedy thing that happened in the 1980s, where it became clear that the emphasis went from immigration into America from countries that are compatible with America in terms of their cultural level and their values and so on, and was intentionally inverted, not just modified, but inverted, to take people from countries that had nothing like the philosophical or moral base that you kind of need to live in a high trust society, and so we've seen just this flood of immigrants who are not here to be Americans. They're here for the benefits. It's what you said earlier. It's the Statue of Liberty, not the Statue of Welfare Beneficiaries. I'm one of those people that believes in legal immigration to this country. I've brought a new immigrant into this country myself, and she's a genuine asset to this country. And if somebody wants to argue with me about that, I'm happy to have that argument. But she is atypical of the stream that we saw reach its peak during the Biden administration, where it was clearly an invasion of non-Americans who were here not to become Americans, but brought here either because they wanted a better life for their families back home, or they wanted benefits, or whatever the case may be. It wasn't because they loved America and just had to be here. When you see all these military-age men coming across the Rio Grande during the Biden administration, you have to ask yourself, these people don't look like the folks that were lined up at Ellis Island. As far as MAGA nativist ethos goes, the this business about I'm more American than you are is pretty ugly business as far as I'm concerned. The genius of this country is that a naturalized citizen is as American as somebody whose family came over on the Mayflower. That doesn't mean that there are no naturalized citizens who are essentially anti-American, but I'd be willing, in fact, I'd bet my life on it, that if you were to take naturalized U.S. citizens, you say take a decent sample size of them, 10,000 of them, let's say, and take 10,000 college professors who've been in America for 6 generations, I can tell you which group I think would be more American in terms of values, work ethic, and the kind of people I'd rather live next to. And I don't think there's any question about that. So the left has used this kindness and generosity in order to set up another pathway to destroy America, and America is e pluribus unum. That's the whole thing. This whole idea of hyphenated Americans really just shouldn't exist at all. And to be fair, most of the people who really get America refuse to go along with that convention, that hyphenated convention. I've seen a number of people. I'm trying to remember if it was Lawrence Fishburne when I saw when I was on when I was editing the show. But basically, I've seen people say, well, how do you feel about this as a black American? And they say, how about if I just tell you about how I feel about it as an American? And that's exactly the way it should be. So these people who are kind of gatekeeping America, who are, you're not American enough to stay here. Certain people come to mind, because of your ancestry. And some of these people, it might have been Morgan Freeman. And some of these people, in fact, it almost certainly was Morgan Freeman. Some of these people, are 50% foreign nationals. And it's ugly, and it doesn't belong here. And it looks like we got a question about that coming up a little bit later. So, the idea of unlimited immigration of anybody who wants to get away from the hellholes that they've created for themselves is essentially a plaque on a statue that has nothing to do with the structure of this government, in the same way that that the separation of church and state doesn't belong in, it cannot be found in any the founding documents. It's not in the Declaration. It's not in the Constitution. It was in a letter that Jefferson wrote to a pastor, I think it was. And these are this is what the left does. It just atomizes ideas, and then from those shattered pieces reassembles them into sentences that provide them a way of power. And one of the ways of power is you let people into the country who won't do the jobs that Americans, who will do the jobs that Americans won't do. And one of those jobs is voting for Democrat. So it's clear that the whole thing has been a manipulation of our decency and our generosity, and there's a big pushback against that, which is appropriate. I think you can push back too hard and get into this kind of nativist tunnel vision. I hate to keep coming back to Elon Musk, but I don't think anyone has done more for America's future than Elon Musk. He's certainly made a lot of money here in America, paid a lot of taxes, and according to this nativist argument, he shouldn't be here. And I think that's nuts. To me, I can't think of a more American guy than Elon Musk. I just think he happened to be born in South Africa, but his attitude towards freedom of speech, and feeling it in his pocket. He bought Twitter when it was a significant hunk of his net worth. He's given us a reusable space program. He's given us, hope for the stars. He's given us very fast internet pretty much anywhere on Earth, and innovates and innovates and innovates and innovates. It provides excellence, lowers costs. He's the definitive American, and nativists would say, no, he hasn't been here long enough, and he's a foreigner, and we need to chuck him out to keep the American bloodline pure. See, I don't believe it's an American bloodline. I believe it's an American ideal. It's a I don't want to say philosophy or a religion. We all know what Americanism is. We know what it is, and the left knows what it is. Both sides know what it is. We love it. They hate it, and I would rather have people from overseas who love it and be surrounded by those people than be surrounded by people who have been here for 5 generations and who hate it. Yeah, it's an outlook. Yeah, exactly. Okay, moving on. Ian Nolan. Bill, just this week, Miami has elected a Democrat mayor for the first time in 30 years, and Trump's overall popularity continues to decline, although his approval for blowing up drug boats is actually up. Among the libertarian circles in which I swim, the consensus is that the reason for this is that while Trump is doing well on several of the pillars he was elected on, immigration, healthcare reform, helping end wars, although Venezuela is scaring us, there are 2 major pillars which he seems to have utterly failed on. One, Congress seems to have boxed in DOJ to fighting some fraud but no serious reforms, and Trump seems to be supporting Congress in doing so, talking up Johnson and Lindsey Graham and opposing Massey and Paul. And second, despite tons of criminal referrals from DOJ, the Weaponization Committee ran Paul, where are the prosecutions? Be another thing if juries or judges were letting the swamp off the hook, but there's not even any prosecutions. Both of these items together just look like Trump is getting rolled again by the uniparty swamp, and that's demoralizing. Are we missing something, or is there a different way you would characterize the losses that seem to be happening? No, Ian, I think you got it exactly right. I think you got it exactly right. I've said this several times, but the first two or 3 months of the Trump administration were just astonishing. And what is it? What are those things called? DOJ was going through the U.S. government. Was it that the Langoliers? Was that Stephen King's short story about these creatures that essentially eat up reality at the end of the day, and they just swallow everything? It was just going through, and we just saved this many billions off of USAID, shut down this whole thing. It was funding the Democrats. It was supporting all this nonsense. We said, yes, wait till they get to the serious stuff, and they started turning on the Department of Education. And somewhere in there, and we're still thinking, man, they haven't even got to defense. Forget even defense. They haven't even gotten to entitlement programs yet. Wait till DOJ gets a hold of Social Security and SNAP benefits and all the rest of this stuff. And right in there, there's a falling out between. This is the time of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. There's a big falling out between Elon and Trump. Nasty falling out. Trump basically says. Elon basically says, you don't seem to be serious about cutting this budget. So, he said this pretty much verbatim, so I'm out of here. It was a temporary position anyway, but surely DOJ is not moving at the pace it was moving at before. Now, Asa Effendi says, I think you guys are overlooking the numerous accomplishments of these first 6 months and the pace of the work. And there's no question that what he's done has been astonishing, but I also think there's no question that there's a feeling that the momentum is fading. And I think the second point is much more important. I was arguing in the early days of the administration when people were saying, where are the prosecutions, where are the convictions? I was saying, give them time. You got to give them time. You have to investigate these things. You have to have the evidence. You have to have the case. You got to make sure everything's airtight. Don't rush anything. Don't do anything stupid. Don't contaminate evidence. Just lock it down. But when Letitia James and James Comey were indicted, and then that was just thrown away, then, I asked Stephen Scott on our backstage show, I said, so what happens now? They're probably going to walk. It's like, I don't want them to walk. I want that to be the beginning. I haven't seen anybody go to jail yet. Nobody. And yes, this is disheartening. And so, yes, you're right. DOJ seems to have slowed down. and the desire to pay down the debt seems to have stagnated. I remember when they were talking about taking the money that Doge was saving and taking half of that money to repay the debt and taking half of the money to refund IRS checks. I was like real on favor of that. And then you have to add to this the absolute catastrophe of how the Epstein files were handled. And you've got guys who I personally trust, and I will continue to trust. Dan Bongino is one of them. I believe Dan Bongino is uncorruptible. I believe he is an untouchable. I think his patriotism and his sense of sacrifice for America are beyond question. And when Dan Bongino was on the verge of walking out over how that was handled, it was actually a relief to me, because it meant to me that you can still trust guys like Dan Bongino, and I think by extension, Kash Patel. Ace Effendi says, guys, we can't win these prosecutions. I was perfectly willing to say, okay, let the process be the punishment, but Comey and James both had their cases thrown out by the swamp. There is no process. There is no punishment. We cannot bring these people to justice. I think it's time to face that reality. You may be right about that. However, weren't those trials supposed to take place outside of Washington? Wasn't that supposed to be it, that they were going to be held in Florida? And then the judge throws them out. My understanding of this is incomplete, obviously, but that the judge threw them out not on the merits of the case, but rather on some irregularities about how the prosecutor was selected. So how do you make a mistake like that? How do you not find an airtight prosecutor? And if it turns out that it gets thrown out, why do these charges not be brought with a different prosecutor? It's not double jeopardy. It's not like they've been on trial before and they have to go again. It is feeling. I'm definitely feeling it. But the Epstein thing really shook a lot of us. And what shook us was not so much the lack of release of the Epstein things, but Donald Trump's unbelievably bad read of the room, and to hear Trump say that anybody who's concerned about the Epstein files isn't a Donald Trump supporter, and nobody cared about that stuff anyway, is it's so unbelievably maladroit that I couldn't believe he was saying it. Really hurt. And look, I got my feelings hurt, and I've gotten over it. I support the man. I support him 100% in everything he's doing. I just think that that things are kind of slipping, and I don't fully understand the Venezuela thing. I'm not worried about a war with Venezuela in terms of boots on the ground. I don't see any situation in the world that at least is on the horizon now that require American boots on the ground. But I don't get the threat being commensurate with not just the rhetoric, but the but the reactions. But the main thing is, we wanted this swamp drained, and we're now a year past his election. We're about a month away from a year after his inauguration, his ability to actually do something. And it seems like virtually all of the good things that happened real early, and it's been coasting since then. Now look, we got another 11 months. That's a lot of time. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the midterms. There's no question Donald Trump has lost a lot of support, and I don't know if he's going to get that back. And yet, the Democrats continue to go further and further down that hole, which really just leaves a lot of Americans feeling like, what the hell do we have to do to get a swamp drained around here? And the landscape is changing. The traditional divide between left and right, this vertical divide, is much more of a horizontal divide now. I find, to my amazement, that I am taking positions that I would have thought would have really surprised me prior to 2020. 2020 and COVID destroyed. It wasn't an unquestioning faith in big government, but it was a general opinion on my part that all of the people that were big pharma, big corporations rather. My general take on it was that these big corporations are actually doing really important work, and the left hates them because they're making money, but they're making money because they're producing things of value and so on. And then along comes COVID and things like Enron preceding it, and Disney and all of this squeezing out the last dollar, and it seems to be like everywhere. Streaming services used to own a movie. Now you basically do a lot of now you just are a member at Amazon and you want to see a movie, and it turns out no, it's not playing at Amazon. It is playing on Paramount Prime if you'd like to try a membership of Paramount Prime. So they're moving these movies around so that you have to sign up for all of them to see what you normally could have just bought. I understand the airline business, I think, better than most people. I understand that they make less than a penny on a dollar in terms of profit. I understand that a lot of the problems, just again with the airline industry as an example, are connected to the fact that people are buying tickets based on price. And that, I mean, that's sensible, but I mean, people are buying tickets on airlines for like a $7 difference, you know? Somebody here's got a fare for $345, and somebody's got a fare for $327. Everybody takes a $327 fare. And so what are airlines like what used to be kind of high-end, like, for example, just off the top of my head, Delta, American, and United, let's say. There have always been discount airlines, you know. There was lots of them. Pretty much now you're limited to Frontier and Spirit, and I'd rather walk than fly either one of those airlines. But because of the internet and because of things like Expedia, because people are trying to save $10 on the airfare, that means that airlines like United and American and Delta have to shorten the legroom, pack as many people in there as possible, make you pay for check luggage, not offer any kind of food service, and it just keeps going down and down and down. Dave Boutte says former Virgin Atlantic had the best safety video. Yeah, it was Virgin America actually, and I've talked about that many times. I've watched this. I've watched the in-flight announcement for Virgin America. I bet I've watched it 35 times. It was just amazing. Virgin America was by far my favorite airline, and it's out of business. It was bought by Alaska, I guess. And so, let's take Boeing, a company that I used to just absolutely worship. I mean, I'm just crazy about Boeing. I mean, how would I not be? First time I ever flew on an airplane was a Boeing 707 Pan Am with that beautiful tail spike and the Pan Am blue and everything, and you know, the 727 was my favorite looking airliner. Just thought it was super cool looking. I had played with 727 toys, and the 747, never a huge fan of the way that looked, but it just Boeing with the Boeing SST and all of this stuff. And then you find out that Boeing gets bought. Boeing buys McDonnell Douglas, and McDonnell Douglas's management style overtakes and eats Boeing's management. Boeing used to be run by engineers. Now it's run by I almost said capitalists. That's how bad things have gotten. Now it's run by money guys, and they can save money by assembling the airplane in different places, and they can save money by cutting this and cutting that, and so on and so on and so on. And now Boeing's reputation is trash. I still think they're superb airplanes. I think the 737 is the most astonishing. Well, there's no question it's the most successful aircraft in the history of the world. But I love the 737. Love it. And then they just start doing stupid things. Air Techie says bean counters and soulless hellspawn. Everything is being taken over by bean counters and soulless hellspawn. The studios are not making anything new. They're just squeezing the last drops of juice out of things like Marvel and Star Trek. I saw a little bit of Starfleet Academy, and not only is it woke, it's just lazy, and and the people who are making these decisions now have no life experience. Gene Roddenberry was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism during World War II. He was on the beat as a cop. He had something to write about. And all of the writers of the original Star Trek shows were men, and a couple of great women too, DC Fontana and a couple of others. These are people who had lived lives, and they had things to draw on. And now writers who are 25, 30, they were in their 30s back then, but these writers now, what experience do they have with hardship or pain or anything other than the just kind of cynical meta kind of dismissiveness, like, I'm far too sophisticated to take this Star Trek nonsense seriously, or this Lord of the Rings seriously, or this Star Wars seriously. We're far too sophisticated to buy into this childishness, and you end up with just dreck. So, yeah, it's time to gear up. One of the things that I've spent so much time on with the physics of the colonies is that I am quite convinced, by the way, and I have rooted this in actual physics. I've spent a ton of time on this. I am absolutely convinced that I have found the description of how to move from point A to point B much faster than the speed of light. It doesn't violate any laws of physics, and it doesn't take a universe of energy to do it. And it's got to do with 21st century physics. I mentioned this before. Star Trek and Star Wars and everything else has 20th century physics, Einsteinian relativity physics, wormholes and warps and all of this other stuff, matter, antimatter. It's all obsolete. I'll get back to that on Monday. But yeah, I definitely feel it. And if we, yeah, sure, Star Wars has physics. Star Wars has matter-antimatter reaction. Star Wars has a time-space warp. In the original pilot, it was called time-space warp factor 4 or whatever. It made it clear from the beginning, even though it didn't just sit down and give it to you, that that it was dealing with stuff that was cutting edge in 1966, and it was. And when I say it's obsolete, oh, Star Wars has physics. Sorry, I misread. Yes, no, there's no physics in Star Wars. And the people who are writing this stuff, are so ignorant. They're not just ignorant about life. They're just so badly educated that they have things like the spore drive. You know, it's just a person with any fundamental understanding of astronomy and astrophysics could never even conceive of such a thing and be laughed out of the room. But these, latte sipping, transgender feminists are all morons. They don't know anything about science fiction, and they don't care. They have nothing but contempt for it. It's clear. It's very clear they have nothing but contempt for it. Kathleen Kennedy is the embodiment of what entertainment has become. A power-hungry, bitter lunatic who doesn't have any talent, who managed to politically worm her way into a position of power and is determined to wreck things that were done by people far more talented than her in order to appease her own diseased psyche. And so, okay, there you go. And the financial structure with things like China picking up so much of the tab and things like BlackRock means that they no longer have the incentive to succeed. It doesn't matter if they fail. It doesn't matter if they destroy Lord of the Rings. Doesn't matter. Lord of the Wings would be a great name for a wing restaurant. I can't believe I just let that go. That is a great name for a Buffalo Wings restaurant, Lord of the Wings. But they don't care. They don't care. They're happy to destroy it. So, yeah, it's it's time. It's time for some new blood there, and I'm working my tail off on this and loving every second of it. Okay, Capital G Geek, greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. Trump published his new national security strategy last month. It's America First and a significant realignment from the past 50 years. Let me just say one thing real quick. I am 100% into America First. It's just people like Fuentes say that they're America First, but that's not what they're really saying. They're saying America only. And there's a big difference between America First and America Only. America Only is stupid. And the reason America Only is stupid is because I like America First. Alliances are success. Trade alliances provide wealth and prosperity for America. Military alliances provide bases and allies and all other things for America. And if you cut all that off, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face, and it's just childish and really, 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 really immature. Anyway, back to Capital G Geek. The new national security strategy. It includes an end to forever wars, restoring Europe's Western identity, instilling a culture of competence, reindustrializing the economy, and controlling our supply chains. Brookings, The Atlantic, and the New York Times all hate it, so it must be good. I'm with you on that. It might make a decent right-angle topic or even a new firewall. It's a very readable 33 pages, and you can find it here. And here's a link, so I'll just bring that up so I can take a look at it. I just spent 25 minutes trashing, Trump's achievements in terms of what they could have been or what I thought they were going to be. So let me spend at least another 10 minutes going the other way. Just the appointment of Pete Hegseth alone, just that, was worth it for me. I feel the same way about Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. I do think this is not the same FBI. Patel said that in the first 2 months of their new administration, they'd caught all 10 of the FBI's former most wanted lists that had evaded the Biden administration for 4 years. But specifically, Hegseth has really, really energized the military in the way that really mattered, and that's in terms of morale. And Hegseth did it. I think he did it like 2 days after he was confirmed. When I saw him in I think it was Munich, 5 o'clock in the morning in freezing weather in his shorts and a sweatshirt out there, running in the morning with the rest of the guys on that base, I said, this is unbeatable optics. This is unbeatable message. This is exactly what we needed. Exactly. And he has turned the Department of Defense. If you had told me that that I would live to see transgendered people being ejected from the military, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said, nope, that train has left the station. It is politically impossible, but they just plain did it. Bill, ads are on. I turned the ads off. I made a point of turning the ads off. Let me just see. I really did. Hang on. Yeah, there they are on again. Sorry about that. I did turn them off, and maybe I just saved the page or something. Thank you. Now I need to go back here. So that's all great. I don't know why they canceled the Constellation frigates. I thought they were pretty cool. Although I'm going to assume there's some good reason for it. Last thing we need is another littoral combat ship, or little crappy ship as they're otherwise known. But I just thought that we could use a lot more hulls in the water, and I thought the Constellation was pretty cool. I'd like to be the captain of a frigate. I think that'd be right about right, It's manageable. So We are getting a new 6th generation fighter. That looked like it was canceled, but it's on. So that's good news. Things like the Mako missile, hypersonic strike missile, anti-ship missile, the AIM, is it the 260? The fact that they're taking standard missiles, which are the missiles that are launched out of the vertical launch tubes on Aegis-class destroyers, and bolting them underneath the wings of F-18s and using them as 100-range missiles while they were waiting for the AIM-260. I thought that was pretty freaking cool. In DCS, I have killed hundreds of airplanes, hundreds, with those freaking telephone poles lashed to the wings on that thing. Is just great. Just great. John Pershing says the Constellations could have been great, but they are under construction, steel being bent, and the design hasn't even been finalized. Even in the sections that have been laid down, it's a total cluster. Well, that figures, John. How do we get to be this powerful and this stupid at the same time? You know, I really sometimes think that all of our problems consist of just pairing, you know, like pairing, not pairing, like combining things, like the way you would pair a tree, like a fruit tree. Just cut off all the dead branches, just go at them and cut off all the dead branches and just leave the productive stuff, and then like staging, just drop all of this dead weight, just drop it into the Atlantic and watch what would happen. If you took I'll be more than generous. If you took the 100 million most productive, patriotic, smart, and energetic Americans and just took them away from all the rest of this kudzu, we would be raking diamonds on the moons of Neptune by now, you know? We just have so much weight, dead weight, that we have to carry, and it gets heavier every day. So, anyway, we'll see. Roadrunner, greetings and salutations, friend Bill. Hello, and greetings to you, Roadrunner. It's looking more and more likely that you were correct in saying Nick Fuentes is not a major influence on the right. Almost none of his support is from grassroots supporters, according to a report from the Network Contagion Research Center. That's kind of an ominous name. Almost all of his support came from, quote, a coordinated campaign among his followers, foreign engagement farms, anonymous bot networks, and targeted raid tactics aimed at gaming the algorithms on X. Seems as long as conservative or other outlets keep posting about him trying to expose his anti-conservative behavior, and the lamestream media keep pushing him forward as a flag bearer for the conservative movement, his apparently false popularity will appear to grow just due to the number of posts about him. Isn't it time for the conservatives to just ignore him? Full disclosure, I'd never heard of Nick Fuentes until he was mentioned on one of your shows, and I've still never watched any one of his videos. I spent about a week and a half, 2 weeks concerned about Nick Fuentes, and he's still a factor. But as I said before, I think we are experiencing peak Fuentes right now. In fact, I think we're probably past peak Fuentes. Nick's entire appeal is that he is seen as the oppressed, suppressed speaker of truth, and the only person with enough guts to tell it like it is. And that is, I'm not saying that's not still effective. There's still a lot of it out there, a lot of it, and it's real. But most of that came from when you couldn't even say his name. Fuentes and AOC went to the same school. How about that? I think the biggest problems that Nick has is that he is completely inconsistent. He doesn't have a consistent philosophy. And frankly, I thought he, as a general rule, kind of I won't say he outsmarted Piers Morgan, but I think he, for most of it, outhandled Piers Morgan, except for because all the accusations about Nazis and all this other stuff, and Fuente says, well, it may have been actually 10 million Jews. Okay, I think that the thing that is Nick Fuentes' actual really weak spot is being a 27-year-old virgin. I think that is I don't know how you explain that. He's a good-looking guy. He's a famous guy. And he's got to be a rich guy. And any one of those three would be enough for any red-blooded American boy that I knew to be making out like a frickin' bandit. I mean, like a bandit. And he's afraid of women. He's really afraid of them. He's afraid of sex. How do you be 27 years old and be afraid of sex? I don't get it. It's beyond my understanding. Like as the Wape says, apparently he's known to be gay. I don't think he's gay. I don't think he's gay at all. I really don't. I think he's certainly not Capuchinatus, as some actual real people hold to no sex before marriage. I think he is certainly not one of those people. People like that have real respect for women, and he has no respect for women. I just think that girls scare the hell out of him. Because of MGTOW? Bill, come on, Eric. Look, everybody that I knew, myself included, obviously front of the list, was a so-called incel when they were in their teens and 20s. Everybody. If you didn't have a steady girlfriend, you were what you would call today an incel. Everybody was trying to get laid, and very few people were actually doing it. We didn't have a name for it because we weren't proud of it. We were just kind of, working hard to make sure that, we didn't end up in that boat. And it takes a lot of time for some guys, sensitive guys and smart guys, to figure out the friend zone. And that's back when women were of a much higher quality than they are today. The women today are just absolute trash. They're just dumb as a box of hammers. They're just 304s, and they're just marked up and ugh. But that doesn't mean all of them. There's a lot of people out there who are just really it. Gotham Coach says, Bill, a lot of Gen Z are remaining virgins well into their mid-20s, study shows. Yeah, I think you can probably blame that on the universal access of pornography. I think that's responsible for pretty much all of it. Slatoos, says Dave Big Booty. But for me, I don't know if Piers actually called him a loser. I've heard other people call him a loser. If you're a 27-year-old virgin, man, that's not normal. That's not for a guy who spends so much time defending men, young men who have been absolutely crapped upon in ways that history has never shown us before. I just don't think that that's how you lead that. It seems to me, if I was leading an army of incels, my first line of work would be to make sure that they weren't incels any longer. I would spend a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time, teaching that army how to win this game. It's actually really simple. It takes some people a lifetime to figure women out, but once you do, it's a piece of cake. It's just absolutely piece of cake. Works every time. And not just 60% of the time it works every time. It really is. Once you really understand female psychology in the dating market, you have to be nearly... You have to want to lose. And I don't know. So there's that. I just think right now he's on his absolute peak, and I say, have a good ride, man. You can definitely throw a lot of stones and break a lot of things, and so can your Groyper army, but there's no future in a movement that doesn't have an element of hope and optimism and some form of a better life other than bitching about how bad things are. Bob Neve, with 3 months of hindsight, what effect has the assassination of Charlie Kirk had on America and the conservative movement? I think that Charlie Kirk's assassination shook the branches really hard, and I think that that it shook loose people who were kind of hiding in the trees, people who weren't genuine conservatives philosophically. I think it was such a an explosion, such a blast wave that it. I wish I could have come up with that Capuchinado wins for the night. It shook things so hard that a lot of nuts fell out. I really think that's it. It just blasted everything, and the people who had a genuine belief in conservatism held on to that belief, and one of those beliefs is that there's truth and that there's evidence and that there's rationality, and anybody who believes in those things clearly understands that the guy who they caught did the job. When people start bringing in, oh, he was shot by a guy who was, moved his hand right at the same time, or multiple shooters, or it was the Jews, or it was the Egyptians, or it was the French, or what, it's like, okay, all right, these are people whose critical thinking skills are so poor that they genuinely think that the moon landing was faked because one shadow on one wide-angle picture seems to be out of alignment, when in fact there are, when you count the videos, millions of still pictures taken from the surface of the moon, all of which show conclusive proof that we were there. I'll just give you one example. The rover traveling across the lunar surface has a black sky and moon surface lit to the horizon. It's clearly night. There is no light source that you can use at the desert at nighttime that uniformly and extensively lights an entire landscape. If you were to do that with studio lights, you would have hot spots and dark spots, and you couldn't light to the horizon. The only thing that could do that is the sun. And why you would put a camera on a car and drive for 200, I don't know what the distance was, 20 miles, 30 miles, streaming it live, if you were trying to fake this thing, and then put mirrors on your helmet so that you can see the reflection. It's just ridiculous. Of course we went to the moon. Of course we did. And whatever emotional problem you have, most of this is driven by either millennials or Zoomers who cannot tolerate the idea that it wasn't even boomers. It was the silent generation. Neil Armstrong wasn't greatest generation, and he wasn't a baby boomer. He was a silent generation. He was that generation that that grew up during Korea, and they can't handle the fact they've been told that they're ignorant, by boomers and greatest generation, and now to some degree Gen X is doing it too, and that hurts their feelings, and so they want to believe that there's no way that boomers could have gone to the moon without computers because they live on their computers. But it wasn't the boomers. It was our older brothers, not our parents. And we sure as hell did. And anybody who understands anything about physics knows that in the space of 3 seconds of video, 5 different ways to prove that you were actually on the moon. Yeah, and now flat Earth is a thing. Brandon Rapp says it's because they didn't grow up with cap guns, Bill. See, I paid attention to class, LOL. You're exactly right, my man. It's because they didn't have cap guns. As I point out in Apollo 11, what we saw, you can't understand the moon landing unless you understand cap guns, because they had to do things without electronics. They had to go bang and smoke came out of them. And they were cool, too. They were really, really cool. I never liked the chrome 6-shooters, however, when we were playing Cowboys and Indians, I played Cowboys and Indians like any other red-blooded American, and I hated the fact when we had to be Indians. But once I saw Daniel Boone, once I saw the show, I said, that's for me. And from that point on, it wasn't, frilly shirts and white cowboy hats and, the twin chrome 6-shooters. It was, buckskin jacket, coonskin hat, and a Winchester rifle. That was how you played Cowboys and Indians, by God. So yeah, Bob, I think basically what happened was it just shook the branches. And by the way, it wasn't just the blast wave from the death of Charlie which shocked the hell out of the entire world. I had my cousins visiting from Australia just a couple days ago, and when I told them that I knew Charlie Kirk personally, they were just gobsmacked. They just couldn't believe it. Um, but I think that after the shock of it went through, I think, well, certainly two people, and probably three, maybe a few more, looked at this and said, "My God, now there's $100 million organization sitting there on the ground with no leader, all of this money, all of this structure, not just TPUSA structure in terms of get out the vote, but the structure that TPUSA had built and Charlie had built, really built, that could be a pathway for actual political power through election." I don't think there's any question Charlie was planning on becoming president. There's no question about it, obviously. But TPUSA could back candidates, and they moved so many people that it's not just an incredibly financially lucrative structure, but politically lucrative as well. And I think, well, I don't think, I know. Marusha Dark disagrees about this. Marusha's certainly welcome to disagree about this. There is not the slightest question in my mind that Candace Owens really was completely smitten with Charlie Kirk. I think she was spurned by him. I think she became unbelievably jealous and bitter. And when Charlie got killed, I think Candace Owens looked at that situation and said, I am going to move in and take over TPUSA. And when it turned out that Erica got put into place very quickly, then it was time to go after Erica, and it was time to go after the existing leadership at TPUSA in order to discredit them. And I think Candace has very rationally set out to launch a campaign to discredit and disgrace and demoralize and delegitimize, that's the word I'm looking for, the existing TPS USA leadership, including Erica Kirk, because she thinks that she can be, I think she thinks that she could get that company by popular acclaim. I really think that's it. So, let me just see what I got on. I'll make sure there's a question that's coming on. So, the one thing I'll say is, I would rather that this hadn't happened, obviously, but I would rather that it happens now, or just burn it down. Coffee Shinato says yes. If he can't be mine, then he can't be anybody's. And if TPUSA can't be mine, then it can't be anybody's. That's the kind of person she is. She is a very, very angry, narcissistic, venal, and resentful, dark triad personality. She has a large following, yes. There's a lot of people who believe she's searching for the truth. I stand with Candace. Okay, keep standing. You know, it was the Israelis, then it was somebody else, and it was simultaneous shooters, then it was somebody else, then it was the Egyptians, then it was the French, and all of it, and all of it, and all of it, all of it, all of it, all of it. And you know, stay on board until finally you reach the point where you just realize that it's just a new accusation without any evidence. And so there you go. So I'm sad that it happened, but I'd rather have it happen now than this time next year. Or, you know, whenever, then September of 26 instead of September of 25. Yeah, she's just bat guano crazy. I don't even think that's true, actually. I don't think she's crazy. I think she is fully aware of what she's doing, and I think she is very consciously chipping away at the foundations where they appear to be weakest, and keeps moving so that she doesn't ever get pinned to something she can be disproven against. And the same is for Tucker. Tucker is more of a surprise to me because I thought that he really got it. But I think Tucker's all about Tucker. I think the most important thing to Tucker Carlson is Tucker Carlson, and I think he'll say whatever he needs to say to make money and to stay famous. That's what I think, anyway. Broke college student. Hello, Bill. Hey there, Broke. Topic: what time is it? Can't read this, can you? Disagreement within the right about what the actual situation is now and what is needed. No one knows the future, but the concerns seem valid, at least to me. Yes, I'm concerned about them too. This is exemplified in the questions already asked. The administration talks a big game, but doesn't do much, or at least not enough on various topics. DOJ under Bondi looks to be a joke. Talk about denaturalizing Ilhan Omar, but won't. Real concerns that under a 2028 Democratic win, major legal and political persecution against administration officials. See the boat strikes comments. Trump has been the best Republican president in a while, but half victories will not cut it. I kind of agree with all of that. Nick is not a major force or mover on the right, but a representation of where the Overton window has moved through necessity and an increasing inability to constrain the conversation from both mainstream outlets, CNN, and the mainstream online conservative outlets like Daily Wire and The Blaze. There are fraternal organizations with similar aims that aim at community building. The Old Glory Club is an example. They would be in closer position to Nick as opposed to Ben, but want to build. They have families and successful businesses. So let's just take one example of what's kind of happening here. There is no question that that Black America has become unbelievably toxic. Obviously, not everybody, but you look at the body cam videos. You look at the fights that are going on McDonald's and Walmart, the sense of entitlement, the walking out of the store with stuff, all of this. It is absolutely, absolutely out of control, and the left won't let you talk about it. But if the right doesn't let you talk about it either, like, no, you can't go down that road because we're not racist and we don't want to sound like racist, so we're not going to talk about it, then all that happens is that the pressure builds up between what everybody sees with their actual eyes and what they're told is actually happening. And this is, I think, the cause of much of what's causing this disheartenment on the right, and it is without question the power source of Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes talks about things that are true, and people know that he's talking about things that are true. They're unpleasant things to talk about, but they're true. And the problem with Nick is that Nick makes it an absolutism. He doesn't discriminate between the behavior that's caused by the culture, and he certainly doesn't acknowledge the fact that whatever percentage of the culture it is, in this case in Black culture, it is not 100% of it, and so he goes to places that lead to very bad outcomes. But the fundamental assertion is correct, and we are not allowed to talk about obvious pathologies like this, then and the same thing goes for criticism of Israel as well. To the degree that conservatives who criticize Israel are called anti-Semites, criticism of the state of Israel is not anti-Semitism. And let's just clean up the language into something that's much more on the nose and much more honest. Criticizing Israel is not Jew hatred. I'm an ally of Israel. I've got a tree in Israel. I'm proud to be an ally of Israel, but don't certainly for a second think that Israel is beyond criticism or any of that stuff. But when conservatives say we can't talk about that because we don't want to be seen as racist or anti-Semites, even though it's true, I'm not talking about Israel or anything, I'm just saying to the degree that it's true, then we become yet another force that's repressing this spring that is building up more and more and more pressure. And people just want the truth. This has always been my position. Is I will tell the truth as it appears to me. If I am wrong, it is because I was mistaken. It's not because I was lying. And if I was wrong and can be proven wrong, I'll change my mind and apologize. But to say that, yes, you know this is true and I know it's true, but we can't talk about it because we don't like the way that would make us look, well, that is untruthful. It is an untruthful position to take. And if you do that as mainstream conservatism, then people who are telling at least half of the truth are going to get the attention, and you're going to lose it. And that's exactly what's happened with Candace Owens and with Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. Candace and Nick and Tucker appeal to the craziest segments of the conservative movement. I'm sorry to have to say that. I wish it weren't true, but that's really what it is. They are the fact that at least 2 out of 3 of them are moon landing deniers. I know everybody keeps coming back to the moon landing. Obviously, it's my wheelhouse, and obviously, it's my it's my toy. But I think it is an excellent litmus test for how people view the world. And when your appeal is to the people who believe that everything that the government says is a lie, you are appealing to a smaller but much more activated core, and I think you're doing it for money. I'm sorry, I just think you are. There are genuine anti-Semites out there on the left and on the right, and if you are marketing to them, you are damaging a movement that's all about individualism. It's really the core essence of conservatism as we know it. If you are going to make these kind of generalizations, then you don't understand what conservatism is. If somebody said, "What do you think about black people?" my response would be, "Which one are you talking about? Who are we talking about?" I don't see things that way. There's lots and lots and lots of black people that do horrible things, and some of them need to be locked up, and the rest of them need to shut up. But at the same time, you've got guys like Thomas Sowell, my friend Zoe Rachel, and you've got the Hodgson twins. You've got all of these other guys, and this is where generalizations will sink you. So it's got to be about the truth, and the truth is there are many, many black people that are really damaging and really don't belong in civilized society. And at the same time, there are also many, if not most of the black Americans, are hardworking people just like the rest of us, and they're getting tarred with this brush. That's true. And it's a little more nuanced. Ben Carson, obviously, and all the rest, right? The surgeon who operated on my wife's hand, who did such an amazing job. This is where you have to draw the line, and where you have to also have the courage to say, yes, a lot of what these bomb throwers are saying are based on real phenomenon, pattern recognition. But the conclusion that they reach, which is all of the Jews are paid agents of Israel, and anybody who defends Israel is getting a $7,000 check, and all the rest of this nonsense, is just going too far. And you're not appealing to people's better angels. And I think probably this is the one thing that I would use to, this is the last question, Eric's coming up, but I think this is what I would use to kind of close this thing is, if you believe in America, you have, if you believe in the traditional classical idea of America, that is a nation of hope. It is a shining city on a hill, and we have, without question, allowed our idealism and our decency and our absolute aversion to being called names by the left. We have allowed the left to manipulate us into all kinds of trouble, and there's no question about that. But ultimately, it needs to be America is an optimistic philosophy. It's a hopeful philosophy. And the idea of e pluribus unum is the formula that's created the wealth generation engine that saved the entire planet. And it put us on the moon, did all these other things. And you can't go after the problems with the machine that were intentionally done to damage the machine. You can't go at that with a sledgehammer without making the machine worse. First, do no harm. And this is what I see. I see these three people intentionally selling out the ideas that this country was founded on in order to make money. When Tucker Carlson talks about, well, say what you want to about Saudi Arabia, but in Riyadh you don't have to lock your car and they don't have much of a rape problem there. And it's like, Tucker, that's not the solution. Sharia law is not the solution to the American crime problem. The solution to the American crime problem is enforcing the fucking laws in America. That's the solution to the American crime problem. And to say and imply and all of the rest of that stuff that no, these authoritarians are going to save us from it. No, they will not. They will not. And if you try to take that as an American position, I am going to stand against you on that one. No, thank you, John. John, back again with another $100 super chat, like the super study is. It just that big red banner comes up, and it's almost like hitting the tape on a marathon. Thank you very much. Frank Blazowicz says, then why aren't Republicans focused on making the world better for young men? This is the question of our age, my friend, and this is why I have thrown my entire soul into the one thing that I have been putting off my entire life, which is creating a vision of what that future would look like. A vision of something better. Not just a criticism of what exists, but an image of a future that is hardworking, that is cooperative, heterosexual. Men and women love each other. They both know their strengths and weaknesses. The men protect the women nurture the men. They all have families. They all have kids. They have ties of friendship that they depend on, but they are each independent. Nobody is taking their money and giving it to people by force. They're helping each other out because they know that they may need help someday. All of these ethics that make up the essence of America, at least the ideal of America, have to be shown to people. And I'm going to, by God, do it. I'm going to, by God, do it. Sarkon the Wolf says, money causes corruption, so what do? You take away their money. I don't think that is necessarily true, that money causes corruption. Obviously, the misquoted expression is that money is the root of all evil, when the actual quote is, the love of money is the root of all evil. I think that's more accurate. And the reason I'm arguing with you here, Sarkon, there's no question that a lot of people who are, we talked earlier about corporations, squeezing the last dime out of, Star Trek, Star Wars, airlines packing in people like sardines, Boeing cutting safety in order to maximize profits. All true, 100%. But I think that the people that I know, and I've known several millionaires, and I've gotten to know one billionaire, well enough to say hi in the mall, back when there were malls. They didn't do it for the money. They did it because they had a vision about something and a vision to improve society, and they took a shot at it, and they did improve society, and they created so much value for other people that they became millionaires. I've never met a millionaire personally that I know, and all the millionaires that I know are self-made millionaires. I think the people who are second and third generation millionaires are bored and really the first generation makes the money, the second generation maintains the money, the third generation squanders the money. That's the way I see things happening. But I don't think it's so much that money enables corruption as 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 the combination of envy, ambition, and laziness. All the millionaires I know worked 80, 100 hours a week. The people who I see as the most corrupt people in society are the bureaucrats who want the trappings of wealth, all the race hustlers, all of the the city councilmen, all of these guys. They want to be wealthy. They have ambitions to power, and they like to tell other people what they to do, but they're too lazy to spend 25 or 30 years building a business that provides value to people in exchange for their money. Those are the people that seem to me to be the most corrupt and corruptible, are those who see money as a not just as a way to live well, but a way to live well at other people's expenses. In order to be corrupt, let's just take a classic example of corruption. Okay, in LA, in Los Angeles, they've spent $350 million a year on solving the homeless problem and building affordable housing. And they've spent $350 million just in the city of LA, this is in California, for something like 10 or 11 years. And you know how many actual apartments they've built so far? 0. So that money has gone to people. And yes, it's true, those people pursued the money. But the moral vacuum in them existed before they got a chance to get their grubby paws on actual cash. In other words, Gotham Coach says Jasmine Crockett is worth $30 million. Nancy Pelosi is worth, what, $180 million? In other words, these people were corrupt before they ever got their hands on money or power. They were so without a moral center that they decided to take the pathway that would allow them to get rich off of other people's suffering. And they have no problem with cheating because they're broken before they get there. There are many people, I would say probably most really rich people are not that way. I would say most really rich people are focused on results and productivity, and maybe that's growing the fortune and all the rest of it. But my experience with the ones, certainly the ones who've started their own businesses, have been that they are about the least corrupt people I know. They work harder than anybody that works for them. And I think the hardest working person on the planet, I think without question, has to be the richest person on the planet. I think there's any question in the world that nobody works harder than Elon Musk. I, for the life of me, do not understand how he is able to run 5 or 6 companies of this size and then take some time off on weekends to try to rescue the federal government. You know, I mean, I'll give you another example. There's a lot about Donald Trump not to like, but I do not see a corrupt bone in his body. When people say, oh, he had this deal with Qatar to get that jet, it's like he's got his own jet. He doesn't need this jet. He just plain, I don't think that Donald Trump has a corrupt bone in his body. Gotham Coach says Bernie Sanders is a communist with 3 or 4 luxury houses. That is definition of corruption. Sarkon the Wolf says the colleges make sure the young men and women think a certain way to advance a progressive agenda. Yes, and it is also true that things are getting harder for young people, and we are in a period of great transition. The whole digital age was a civilizational changing transition, and the recent, and I mean recent 2-year-old, 3-year-old recent addition of AI into the mix causes even more disruption and even more angst and uncertainty for young people. But I do think because I listen to Gen Z and I used to just mock them, and I used to just think, but I was wrong about that. I was really, really wrong about that. virtually all of their concerns are legitimate, but on at the same time, I think the Gen Zers think that boomers lived in this world where we were just given houses and we just had to work, just like oh, you could do it on one family. I started working when I was 13, and I've been working continuously since I was 13. I'm 66 now. I could have retired. I don't ever plan to retire. I'm never going to retire, ever, because I love what I do. I haven't been to real work in 15 years. And when you really want to get down, I haven't had to get to an actual job that I hated since 98 or something. So it wasn't like things were that cushy back then either. My point is that people have, the poorest people today have a life that the richest people 100 years ago couldn't even imagine. Sarkon the Wolf back again, who says, who was eliminated for trying to change college people's minds? Yes. You're absolutely right about that, Sarkon. Charlie Kirk was killed because he was trying to change young people. Not just because he was trying to change young people's mind. He was killed because he was changing young people's mind. He was extremely, extremely effective. And he was murdered for it. There's no question about it. But I think it's pretty clear who did the murdering. I know watching Charlie's videos of him interacting with college students, it seems to me pretty clear who Charlie Kirk made insane with rage, and that would be the transgender crowd and the fat feminist crowd. Those are the people who he made insane with rage. Those are the people that threw things at him. And look, if Israel or somebody like that wanted to kill Charlie Kirk, then Charlie Kirk would have just had a heart attack at home. He would have been putting up some awning or something, and he would have had a fatal heart attack, and that would have been it. That's how professionals operate, and so yeah, this stuff, as I said before, that we live in a world now that the more evidence there is for something, the more unlikely it is that it can be true. In other words, all of the evidence points to this guy, so it can't possibly be him, because where's the twist? There's no evidence for this theory at all. That's why it has to be true. See? Because the big wheels that are turning. It's an abandonment of reality. It's an abdication of reality. And it's a fine line to walk, man, because so many of these conspiracies are clearly nuts. 9/11 was caused by Israel, or was caused by this, or was caused by insurance company, or was caused by Dick Cheney, or whatever. That's just plain nuts. We know what happened on 9/11, and we have a perfectly consistent explanation for what happened on 9/11. And so you want to think that, well, most of these conspiracy people are just plain barking mad crazy. And then you look and there's like, well, explain COVID. Well, no, I can't explain COVID. The government lied to our faces and killed hundreds of thousands of Americans who didn't have to die because they wanted this vaccine, and they intentionally demonized and took off the market simple antivirals that could have been effective. Video Shiro says, so like Andrew Breitbart, I wasn't in Andrew Breitbart's innermost circle, but I was in his second orbit. Jeremy Boring and I were good friends of Andrew Breitbart. We saw him 2-3 times a week. 1 year short of a day, or sorry, 1 day short of a year before he died, Jeremy Boring and I took Andrew Breitbart out to a ribs place and sat him down and said, Andrew, we're really worried about you, dude. You don't look good. You're sweating. You're winded. You're not healthy, and we think you really need to slow down. Yeah, you guys are right. You're right. No, you're right. Yeah, I've been feeling a little bad. The next day, we get a call that from Andrew Breitbart, and he says, it's not lost on me that I'm calling you from the cardiac care unit. Had a heart attack last night. This is a year before he died, which would be the night after we told him to slow down. And he stopped drinking so much, and he lost a lot of weight and got back into better shape and was looking better, and his color was better, and he wasn't out of breath so often. And that lasted for 3 or 4 months, and then he started getting back into the whole thing again and started staying up all night arguing with some barista in St. Louis on Twitter, and more and more and more stress and less rest and more toxins. And a year, almost to the day after we had that intervention with, it was just the three of us, it was me, Jeremy Boring, and Andrew Breitbart. About a year to the day after that, we got a call saying Andrew had dropped dead outside of a restaurant in what's that little thing off of Sunset? There's a little community there, and I know that restaurant. Been to that restaurant many times. Was in there talking to people, being Andrew. Got outside, was waiting for a car or something, and down he went. Andrew Breitbart, a lot of people said, oh, Andrew Breitbart was killed because he had this. No, Andrew Breitbart wasn't killed because he had secret information. Andrew Breitbart died of a heart attack that he knew was coming, that we knew was coming, that we tried to warn him about, and which he just plain ignored. And it doesn't make me happy, but it's true. We saw him, last time I saw him was about 10 days before he died. It was in Washington, and it was at some kind, I don't think it was CPAC, but it might have been something. And no, I saw him at that thing, and the story I heard was from close friends of mine who were at the same event, and they said they saw him about 10 days before he died. He came out of the hotel, he was gray. He was breathing like he had just run a marathon, and he was just sweaty and overweight and gray and out of breath. And they said the same thing. Andrew, you gotta get out of this for a while, man. You need to just take a break. And oh yeah, I will. And he didn't. So that was 13 and a half years ago now. So there you go. Last one for the night. Tonight, the case of the online experts from Mr. Eric Blake. So, Bill, one of the most annoying trends we've seen online is the big mob of alleged experts on facial or verbal cues, always with that three-word opening phrase. You can tell the Apollo astronauts are feeling guilty. You can tell Patel and Bongino are nervous. And now you can tell Erica Kirk is faking her grief. Apparently she's either not crying enough or crying too much, depending on the day. This isn't just the conspiracy addicts proclaiming secret knowledge. It's people proclaiming a false general knowledge we apparently all should know and would know if we weren't bots, of course. So let me ask, Bill, what kind of false knowledge is the most difficult to break through? The we know what you don't, or the you should know already know this, and you're fake if you don't? I think the pernicious one is we know what you don't. The first aspect of this, and the moon landing is a great example, and so is virtually everything else, is the plain, at Flat Earth, for example, is the absolute obvious lack of education on the subject that these people experience. And this is the Dunning-Kruger effect in a nutshell. The Dunning-Kruger study was one of the most valuable things that has ever happened to the human species. Most of you have heard this time by now. Sargon says you can't tell crap, no one knows the real truth. See, that's a unrealistic and cynical attitude, Sargon. You can tell the real truth. Things did happen. Something actually happened. There's 50,000 theories about what happened, but there's no question that something happened. And you can determine what happened if you know how to weigh evidence and reason. This idea that no one can know anything is very dangerous and not supportable by the evidence. It's just not. You're entitled to believe whatever you want to, but this idea that everything is a lie is a lie. Dunning-Kruger, two psychologists, one named Dunning, one named Kruger, did a study, and it's been repeated many times. And what they found was the less that somebody knew about a subject, the more highly they rated their knowledge on the subject. And yes, if you do the research, exactly. That's exactly right. You've got it, Sargon. If you're willing to do the research, if you're willing to weigh evidence, and most importantly, if you're willing to see the argument from the other person's side and defend it from their side, and if you can't, then then you get there. But Dunning-Kruger basically found out that the less you know about something, the more highly you rank your skill in that area. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, all you have to do is go to YouTube and look at those auditions from like the first couple seasons of American Idol or America's Got Talent. And you see the 3 or 4 guys, Simon Cowell is in there and whoever else is in there. And in walks somebody and they say, "Hi, why do you want to be on American Idol?" And they say, "Because I'm the next big superstar. I'm the greatest singer that there is, and I'm incredibly talented, and it's going to be a cakewalk for me." Fantastic, let's hear it. And they start singing, and you think, no, surely this is a joke. This is a paid actor. No one's this bad, right? No one. But they are that bad. And when usually Simon says, "That's the worst audition I've ever heard. You have the worst voice that I've heard in a month." Before they get angry, they do get angry, but before they get angry, they get gobsmacked. What? What? You're terrible. You're just terrible. All my friends say I'm a great singer. It can't be true. I've been a singer all my life. People have been telling me I've been a great singer all my life. Well, you've been lied to. And so they know so little about what good singing is that they think they're good singers. And the converse of this is true. A person who is a great singer, who's determined to become a professional singer, let's say an opera singer or something, those people look at, because they know what they're doing and because they put their 10,000 hours in, those people look at what really excellent singers can do and they compare themselves to that and they say, "I am so far short of what that person is doing that I'm tempted to give up." The more you know about a subject, the lower you rank your ability in that subject. And this, when you get the combination just right, that leaves you with people who are talented enough and dedicated enough to know and see where their shortcomings are, and they become passionate about eliminating the flaws that they are able to see because they want to be, because they understand the job. So when you've got a guy who says that the Earth is flat, I'll just get off the moon landing for the fun of it, you've got a person who is so badly educated and so incapable of critical thinking that they buy the story. But the emotional driver is, this allows people who I think on some level really do know they're not that smart to suddenly have this dawning realization that I have figured out this secret truth. And everybody said I was stupid, but I'm smart enough to see that the Earth is actually flat, and it's all those scientists and all of those, eggheads out there who say that the Earth is round. They're the ones that are wrong, because I've seen this video that shows all these reasons why the Earth is flat and why the Earth can't be a sphere, because people would fall off the bottom and all the rest of it. And they don't know enough about physics and fundamentals to realize why that argument is nonsense. But it's like a shot of heroin right in the vein for them. All of a sudden, they're on the inside. They're the guys on the inside who have the knowledge that you don't have. And they're the ones who are able to lord it over you when everybody's been lording it over them the whole time. And this psychology is a form of a reaction to an inferiority complex. You've always been considered kind of an idiot, and to be honest with you, you have to be an idiot to genuinely believe that the Earth is flat. And somebody comes along and shows them a video that says, "Aha, if the Earth were flat, then this wouldn't happen, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And here's why the Earth can't possibly be round." And they know so little about the subject. Oh my God, that's absolutely right. Now I'm inside the club of people that understand the truth. I'm not one of the stupid ones. I'm one of the smart ones. And they get this enormous endorphin hit, and you cannot talk them out of it. And famously, the flat Earth crowd bought I think it was a laser ring gyroscope. It was, and I want to say it was $20,000 or $40,000 or $60,000. It was a lot of money, right? And they all got together and pooled their money, and they bought this gyroscope because the person who was selling this flat Earth theory explained that since this gyroscope is so sensitive once they own this machine that had been used to defraud the rest of the public, once we own this gyroscope, we'll be able to do the measurement ourselves. And when we fire this gyroscope up, it will show that that it's not moving because the Earth is not moving. The globalists say that the gyroscope will proceed, by 15 degrees an hour. That's the rotation rate of the Earth. But when we get our hands on this gyroscope, we'll know the truth. So they bought this, true story. They bought the gyroscope, set it up on this perfectly stable platform, and so on. Turned the gyroscope on, and the gyroscope was showing a progression of 15 degrees per hour, right on the money. So what did they do? Did they say, well, looks like we're wrong about that. Here is the evidence. They said, no, there's something wrong with the gyroscope. We have to build some kind of a box around the gyroscope because something is throwing off the gyroscope. So in other words, when they actually bought the machine that would close the discussion and they got a result that they didn't like, they didn't change their minds. They retconned the evidence. They said, well, no, it's just not true. And there it is, Yeah, this is a great line. That's a really important line. P7 2017, one of our good friends, said that back when Einstein was developing his theory of relativity, 1,100 scientists signed a letter saying Einstein must be wrong, and Einstein replied, why did it take 1,100 of you? All you needed was one man with the proof. Exactly. You got to be rigid in testing the evidence, but you also have to be flexible enough to say, when you are presented with overwhelming evidence, you just say, I was wrong. Nothing wrong with saying I was wrong. Marusha Dark and I get into arguments on this all the time. Marusha's wrong 99% of the time, but once or twice, Marusha Dark has made an argument, and I found myself defending this position against that argument. I thought, no, Marusha's actually got that's a good point. In fact, yeah, that's not just a good point. I think that's true. You've convinced me. I was wrong about that. Doesn't make you sound stupid. Makes you sound like a super genius. Because people who aren't part of the Dunning-Kruger Club don't mind admitting they were wrong because they don't have inferiority complexes about how smart they are. The smartest people are the ones who routinely say, somebody will be talking and somebody will say, what does that term mean? A person who's feeling self-conscious about being stupid would never ever say anything that would let everybody else know that they don't know what's going on. But people who are really smart they got no axe to grind. They don't have any anything to be ashamed of. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? It's just really pretty straightforward. So there you go. Sandrian says Socrates proved the Earth was round by sending 4 Greek runners 20 miles in every direction to check their shadow. I don't think that's quite it. It was first of all, it wasn't Socrates. It was another Greek, and what he did was he sent somebody 400 miles away and measured the shadow. I think it was 400 miles. 400 miles is enough of the circumference of the Earth to produce a difference in the shadow. And at noon, the shortest, what is the smallest that the shadow gets? And in one place closer to the equator, the shadow was very, very small. And 400 miles further away, it was longer because it's at a different angle to the sun. And not only was he able to prove that the Earth was round, his calculations came within, I want to say came within about 200 or 300 miles. I think he said that the Earth was 7,600 miles when in fact it's like 8,000. But it's just what Eratosthenes. That sounds like it's right, John. But anyway, there you go. Last Independent Thinker says, just like everyone else, when I was younger, I wanted to be right, but then I realized I do not care about being right as long as I learn something. Yes, one of the things that somebody said recently that really rang me like a bell was, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I thought, yeah, man, That is that is absolutely right. And to wrap it up, I've been doing an awful lot of work on quantum physics, and I have some theories about things, and I'm checking it with ChatGPT to make sure. I said, look, we got three categories here. We got the permissible, we've got the possible, and we've got the forbidden. Anything in the physics that is forbidden, that is experimentally proven false, we can't use. Anything that is doubtful but not locked out, we can flag this and play with it. And anything that has not been disproved is fair game. So, the reason I bring this up is having these LLMs they're not great synthetic thinkers, but they are tremendous repositories of knowledge. And my biggest concern with young people, when you talk to young people about, well, why you don't know what year the War of 1812 was fought, and they'll say, well, I don't have to know because I've got my phone, and if I need to know, I'll just look it up on the phone, which is true. But the thing you try to explain to Gen Z especially is, it's not like you don't have access to the answers. The problem is you don't know what questions to ask. You don't know what questions to ask because you don't have the framework. Yes, you can get the answer to any question that is asked of you, but you don't know what questions to ask. And worse than that, you don't seem to be terribly curious about these things. But if you are curious and you have ChatGPT or Grok or something like that, you can give yourself the most astonishing education just by asking fundamental questions about things that this is the Socratic method. I'll ask a question, he'll answer it. That will lead you to another question, he'll answer it. And I'll talk about this more on Monday, but I was really struggling with some of these quantum things. And I just said, you'd ask ChatGPT and it would give you like 4 pages of it. I said, look, just for now, just answer me yes, no, or if you have to elaborate, elaborate. Is this blah, 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 blah? Yes. Is there blah, 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 blah? Yes. If I do this, is this? Yes. If I do this, no. That's a misconception, blah, 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 blah. And I came to realize that one of the reasons I was having so much problem with understanding what quantum information physics basically says is not that I didn't understand the quantum information physics, it's that I had a defective preconceived idea of what like a neutron is. We've talked about, in physics, we talk about a neutron being a particle, and that forces are exchanged by particles exchanging other subatomic particles. And particle is a very, very pernicious word, because particle implies like a little tiny little marble, something that you can touch. It's got a surface, it's got hardness, it's a little tiny little marble. It's a particle. It's not a particle. A neutron or a proton, for example, is not a little tiny ball. As it turns out, a proton is a standing wave of quantum probability. It is energy that has been captured by the quantum field in such a way that it now behaves as matter, as something with mass. If you throw the right frequency and enough energy in terms of amplitude into the quantum field, it will capture that energy, turn it into a standing wave, and that standing wave, just radiating out, is a proton. It's not a little ball. Has string theory been disproven? I don't know. I know quantum information, it's not quantum information holography, that's somewhat different. Classical quantum mechanics has a much more elegant structure than this. And for what it's worth, just to close this out, we'll come back to this on Monday. I am now convinced that the ability to go from one place to another faster than light is entirely possible without violating relativity and without boring holes in space-time or creating wormholes or warps or any of that. The answer lies with the quantum information field, with the underlying substrata of qubits, I came up with a term that I like very much. I'm doing all of this, and the term that I came up is a qubit is a probability pixel, and I'll just close with this. It's good to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. I am not smart enough to understand quantum mechanics the way that a quantum physicist understands it. I just don't have the horsepower for it. I certainly don't have the math for it. I'm just plain not smart enough to understand what is actually happening in quantum mechanics. But I am smart enough to understand the basics of it. I'm smart enough to understand the fundamental principles. And my real skill is I'm good enough with language so that I can take my understanding, my limited understanding of what the scientists are doing, and break that down into analogies that help people who don't have any idea about this really understand it. I'm just real good with analogies and explanations. It's storytelling. I can take something extremely complex, and figure out a way to tell a story about it so that even though you're looking at the shadows on the wall of the cave, you have a new insight to how the universe works, and that's good enough for me. There are so many people who are smart enough to understand quantum mechanics, but not smart enough to be able to explain quantum mechanics, and that's a real skill and a real gift. So I'm grateful for that. P7 2017 says, I'm not smart enough to figure this out, so I imagine somebody smarter than me and did it the way I thought he'd do it, and it worked. Yeah, there you go, man. Fake it till you make it. Anyway, we'll talk about this some more on Monday. It's really exciting for me anyway. Getting the physics of the colonies right is great, and I had always said that the slogan of the colonies was no magic, and I had to eat my words on this for things like wormholes and faster than light travel, but we're not traveling faster than light. We're just getting there in a way that's really interesting and is not only not locked out of quantum mechanics, but is a central part of quantum mechanics. The short form is Einstein enveloped Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics still works just fine within very limited parameters of mass and energy states and speed and all the rest of it, and gravity. But Einstein had a theory that encompassed Newtonian physics but explained a whole lot more, and it seems very clear to me that this quantum information physics is a 21st century physics instead of a 20th century physics, completely encompasses Einstein, doesn't violate Einstein. Einstein's been proven experimentally hundreds of thousands of times, but there is something outside of relativity that's bigger than relativity, much, much bigger than relativity. And while you can't cheat inside the relativity box, including things like warp drives and wormholes, you can get outside of the relativity box and just plain cut out the middleman. Just plain. Now, of course, relativity says you can't travel faster than light in space-time, but we're not going to be traveling through space-time. We're not going to be traveling at all. So that's just a tease. Okay, time for me to go. I'm going to get some food and get some more work done. Relatively short show tonight, about a little under 2 hours, but we've been doing a lot of 3-hour cruises, so there it is. You probably know this by now, but the show's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, who have been keeping us, afloat through all these many years, and guys like John, who just comes in and drops $100 every time the show does up. What a frickin' gentleman you are. The next Einstein will show us the way, and it's possible that I'm the next Einstein, not because I'm smart enough to do the physics, but because I'm smart enough to make inferences from the existing physics because there's something I want, and perhaps put things together in a way that somebody who doesn't want to go and explore the universe hasn't figured out yet. We'll see. We'll see. Um, anyway, thanks so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure and fun to talk to you guys. We'll be back on Monday for the Stratosphere Studio, and until then, take care of yourself. Thanks for the great conversation, and again, thanks to our members. And we will see you guys in a couple of days.